Our first trip out to the Corn State for the Cup Series, I'd say it was a big success in the infield of dreams. Hey there, race fans. It's Race Day Top 5 with me, Frank 5. Iowa Speedway, out in the cornfield in Newton, Iowa, a new track that we have never gone to before in the Cup Series. Our first trip this weekend, I'd say went about as expected as we thought. It was a phenomenal weekend, great battles all around, and our defending champion gets to victory lane. Let's get into all that went down in the Corn State. Number 1, Blaney dominates Iowa. Ryan Blaney, our defending Cup Series champion, picks up his first win of the season, winning last night's Iowa Corn 350 at Iowa Speedway, beating out William Byron, Chase Elliott, Christopher Bell, and Ricky Stenhouse Jr. for the victory. A big win for Ryan Blaney and the 12 team. Coming into this year as the defending Cup champion, you'd expect a lot from this young man, who's definitely been one of our top drivers in the sport the last few years. We always expect him to run up front, battling for wins, top 5s, top 10s. And there have been times this year where he's been close to winning races, but just couldn't seem to get the job done. He almost did it a few weeks ago at Gateway. He was leading off of turn 4, coming to the white flag, and he ran out of gas and ultimately lost the lead and the win. His teammate Austin Cindric proceeded to win that race. And then last week at Sonoma, a road course racer, he's been very good at the past. They ran well, but they didn't run as well as they'd hoped to versus some of their other competitors. They hope to coming into this weekend at Iowa, a track that the Cup Series has never done before, but he's been here and driving an Xfinity and Truck Series, and he's won here in both these series. As a matter of fact, this is where he got his first ever NASCAR win back in 2012, where he drove for Brad Keselowski Racing. He won here at Iowa that night. It was a very special night for him, and he's won here before in Xfinity Series. He came in confident that he could win here and lock himself into the playoffs. And boy, he did just that. He dominated last night's race, leading over 200 laps. He was a rocket ship. He started on the front row, had some great battles at the beginning of the race for the lead with Kyle Larson. I mean, it was so entertaining. I couldn't take my eyes off of that battle when they showed on television. It's just like, hold on to the edge, sitting at the edge of your seat, because the battle between those two for the lead was very entertaining. Blaney ultimately was able to get the stage 1 victory, and then he proceeded to dominate stage number 2 and looked like he was possibly going to sweep both stages. But when we had a caution coming out during green flag pit stops, Blaney fell a little bit deeper in the pack, but was able to rebound and get himself back inside the top 10 as they proceeded to start the final stage. And the last pit stop of the race that they came in and got tires, they actually took 2 tires versus everybody else behind them when they took 4 tires. But those 2 tires got him the track position he needed. He was able to get some good research, which he was really good at all night last night, and was able to hold the lead and had a long green flag run at the end of the race. And we were a little bit worried about him, whether or not he would be able to make the race on tires, because that was a big topic this weekend about the tire management, and there were some failures that happened during practice in the Xfinity race, and I'll get to more of that later. But Blaney was able to hold on the end. And plus, I think when the track cooled down, when the sun went down, the track cooled down, the grip really came onto the racetrack for these guys, and Blaney was able to make the most of it and not let the pressure from behind, from second place and third place, running him down, try to get to him. He was able to hold on, past a lot of those cars that were a lap or about to get lapped with no problem whatsoever, and he proceeded to win his first race of the season. And it was just a big win for him and the team, because number 1, this puts Blaney in the playoffs and he has a chance to defend his title, and 2, he had 80 members of his family, particularly from his mom's side of the family, at the race last night. It showed on the broadcast the family sitting in the front stretch grandstands, cheering him on, wearing some Ryan Blaney shirts. It was absolutely amazing to see the family there. And of course, his dad, Dave Blaney, was there, and he got to see him firsthand after he talked to the TV after winning the race, and what it felt like to win the race and the relief to get that win, knowing now he's in the playoffs. His dad, Dave, was able to give him a great big hug and tell him how proud he was. Of course, yesterday was Father's Day, so it's pretty awesome to see Ryan win at a track where he got, wins at all 3 series there, and have his dad, Dave, in attendance. It's pretty cool. And now that Blaney's in the playoffs, I guarantee more wins are going to start happening for him as we get further and further throughout the season and before the playoffs start. Now that he's locked in, the pressure's off. they're now in the playoffs. Now they got a couple bonus points as well. 5 bonus points with this win, and they got the stage win last night. They now have 7 bonus points on their total right now. So I expect to see more bonus points going forward from Blaney with stage wins and more race wins. But the momentum, when he gets that momentum on his side, there's no stopping him. You saw what happened to him last year. When he won at Martinsville, he carried the momentum right to Phoenix, and he was able to, even though he didn't win the race, he was still able to finish ahead of everybody he was competing against for the championship, and that's why he was last year's champion. So we're going to hopefully see more momentum from going forward this year, and then come playoff time, hopefully our defending champ is ready to have a shot to go back-to-back, something that has never been done in this playoff format. But a big congratulations to Ryan Blaney and the number 12 team on their big win last night at Iowa. Number 2, solid results for some of our main contenders in the sport. Kicking it off with second place finisher William Byron, who got his first ever NASCAR Xfinity Series win at this track back in 2017. This is a track where I expected him to run up front and compete for the win last night. And boy, did he. He had a really good race car last night. Now, I don't think he was the best Hendrick car. I'll talk about perhaps the best Hendrick car a little bit later. But Byron definitely needed a good run like this after a rough outing at Sonoma last week where they got caught up in that wreck at turn 11, had some damage to the car, and was never competitive for the rest of the race, fell laps down. This time, this weekend, he was able to run up inside the top 5, top 10 all night long. And at times during the end of the final second stage, he looked to be in position to possibly contend for the win. Then he fell behind one of his teammates and some other guys, and he had a little contact on one of the restarts with Ricky Stenhouse Jr., who was on a different tire strategy versus William Byron. They made contact, but thankfully both of them were able to overcome that. Stenhouse, of course, got the 5th place, but Byron got the 2nd place. Now, he was inching closer to Ryan Blaney towards the end of that race, because when Blaney started to get into that lap traffic and he got him at the worst possible time, that's where Byron made up some ground. But unfortunately, when he had to catch that traffic after Blaney got by him, it was a little bit tough for the 24 car, and he got within half a second towards the end of the race, but just was enough. He might have needed at least 10 more laps to have a shot at the win. But nonetheless, a great result for the 2014, their best result since his win at Martinsville in April. Then we go to Mr. Consistency, Chase Elliott. What else is new? Chase Elliott has just been the most consistent finisher this year. No finishes outside the top 20 through the first 17 races. We're almost halfway through the season, and he has been inside the top 20 in every single race this year, including his win at Texas. A 3rd place finish from last night. He was a really good race car, particularly on the long runs. They were not a good race car on the restarts or the start of the race, where a couple laps in on like relatively new tires and you don't have really a lot of grip and heat put into those tires yet. He fell back a couple spots, but then we got into a little bit of a long green flag run. He was able to pass guys, and of course his crew chief Alan Gustafson told him on the radio, manage your tires the first 10 laps of this run and then start making your move and start trying to pass guys. And boy, did that happen. And as the track cooled down, it also really helped his car. He had a possible winning race car last night, but I think he needed more of those long runs to work in his favor. And of course, we had a couple of cautions sporadically, but in general, the 9 team executed this weekend about as well as you could have expected. And also, with the solid result that they had last night, and the adversity that his teammate Kyle Larson had, Chase Elliott is now your leader in the regular season point standings. Remember, when you are the regular season leader at the end of race 26 before the playoffs start, you get 15 extra bonus points. He did this in 2022. Could he do it this year? Even though he only has 1 win, he's still finishing well, running well, and more wins are coming down the road for this guy. He already, again, has the win at Texas. He's going to get a few more wins before we start these playoffs. And if he could somehow be the regular season championship leader at the end of race 26 at Darlington, those 15 extra bonus points could come in real handy for him. But a great run last night for the 9 team and Chase Elliott. And then finally, we got Christopher Bell with a solid 4th place finish. And this is great because his weekend did not get off to a good start on Friday. He was one of the cars that suffered some tire problems, and off of turn 4, the right front tire went down and he hit the outside wall really hard, and that forced him to a backup car and he had to start through the field. And the beginning of the race, as they're showing everybody coming off of turn 2, I saw the 20 car get high in the turn 2 area on the track where there's almost no grip up there in that upper lane, but thankfully he kept it off the wall. But he was able to work his way through the field throughout the race. Obviously, there were cautions where the field shuffled around a little bit, but he was still able to pass guys, particularly like the 9 car. Long runs were Christopher Bell's best friend last night. I think he needed a little more of those long runs, particularly maybe at the start of the final stage, for him to possibly have a chance to compete with the 12, the 24, and the 9 towards the end of that race. If we had a 400 lap race, I think Christopher Bell probably could have had a shot to win this race. But given the fact that they had to go to a backup car after the practice crash on Friday and come away last night with a 4th place finish, I think they'll take that. I think that's a really good result. And again, trying to build that consistency and momentum on his side, because after he got that win at Phoenix earlier this year, they went into a stretch where they had 4 races where they were not finishing well and not running well. And then they got the win at the Coca-Cola 600 to get them some momentum back. And the last couple of weeks it has gone well for the 20 team. So keep the momentum up. They're still going to be one of the top contenders we'll be talking about when we get to these playoffs. But great runs last night for Byron, Elliott, and Bell. Number 3, rough night for the Kyles. Kyle Larson and Kyle Busch did not have the results they were hoping for, given how good their cars were last night. Let's start first with Kyle Larson, who, of course, off the win at Sonoma last week, had some momentum carrying into this weekend, and he was the first driver in Cup Series history at Iowa to win the pole. He was the pole sitter for last night, and at the beginning of the race, as I mentioned, him and Blaney had a nice battle back and forth for the lead. Then we got Blaney stretched the lead for a while, and then we had Kyle Larson take the lead. He was able to actually take stage number 2 when we had everybody bunched up together after the caution came out during green flag pit stops. A lot of those guys that had yet to pit came down pit road, but that benefited the guys that were able to get back on the lead lap after making their stops, particularly the 5 car. He was able to drive up there, and he was able to win stage number 2. It looked like he was going to be the guy to win, because actually, in the beginning of stage 2, he came down pit road because he felt like there was something wrong with one of his tires. There was a little bit of a scuff on it. Cliff Daniels said, let's come in, change these tires. He restarted 32nd and got back into the top 5 by the time the green flag pit stops began towards the middle end of stage number 2. It was impressive. That 5 car was very fast last night. Well, things unfortunately did not go his way to begin the final stage. When he was running 3 wide between Daniel Suarez and Brad Keselowski coming off of turn 4, Suarez got a little loose on the inside of the 5 car, came up and clipped the 5. It looked like he was trying to hang on but couldn't do it, and he went around and right into the wall and collected Denny Hamlin, who they had a couple bumps with last night, and Larson was like going, what's his problem? But it was a hard hit for Larson, and such a shame because he had such a good car, about as good as the 12 car, and probably, if this incident didn't happen, I think we're talking about Kyle Larson winning last night's race. His car was so good. I mean, who knows what the car would have been like under the cooling track conditions when we got into those final 100 laps of the race. But all we should know is that they did bring speed, and they should be optimistic coming back here if we do, come back here next year, which I think we will. But it's a little bit of a shame given how good Kyle Larson's car was last night. And then to the other Kyle Busch. I mean, if it weren't for bad luck, this guy would have none at all. I mean, this guy just cannot seem to catch a break in year 2. It's Richard Childress Racing. I mean, Kyle Busch came into this race 8 points below the cutoff line, and coming to a track where he's been at many times before in the Xfinity Series and has a win here in 2010, I figured that last night's race was going to be a race for Kyle to get back some of the momentum and start to get the team running up towards the front. And early on in the race last night, he had a top 10 car, maybe at times a top 5 car. They had speed in that number 8 car. But I don't know what happened in the beginning of the final stage, but something in the rear, maybe something broke, but he fell off the pace and had to come to pit road, and they said something mechanical is broken, so they had to take it back to the garage area and work on it. It got him back out there for a couple laps, but I think something happened with their power steering that forced them to officially cut it off for the night, and they had to retire the car and finish with a 35th place finish, which sucks because I felt like they were going to finish top 10, and this result, it hurts them in points. They were only able to accumulate 1 point last night through the stage breaks, and that rough finish in 35th, it now has them instead of 8 points below the cutoff line, and there's a chance he could have maybe been above the cutoff line after last night's race. He now finds himself 30-plus points below the cutoff line heading into New Hampshire next weekend. I mean, this 8 team, they've got to find a pot of gold somewhere to get some luck on their side, because right now, it's just no luck for this number 8 team in the whole RCR camp. It's just really, really rough. And a lot of people are thinking, after this year, like, should Kyle consider going back to Joe Gibbs Racing, which I'm going to talk about in a moment, or should he maybe consider a reunion in Hendrick Motorsports? But I don't think that's going to happen because I think Hendrick's content with all 4 of his guys. So, I mean, is Kyle Busch just stuck at Richard Childress Racing? Is this a slump that they're in right now? It certainly feels like this is it's just uncanny to see Kyle Busch run like this and have these bad results. They should have been inside the top 10 after the conclusion of last night's race, but unfortunately that mechanical incident put them out of it, and they got to take themselves out of the hole points-wise. They got to find a way to get to victory lane, because at this point, I think it's going to be tough for them to point their way in if they continue to have problems like this. Just a rough night in general for both Kyles, who had promising nights going for them at the beginning of the race. Number 4, the racing at Iowa with some tires. This weekend at Iowa, of course, the first trip for the Cup Series here, where it's going to be such a fun experience for everybody. But one of the storylines entering last night's race was tires. We had some tire failures during practice on Friday that hurt a couple drivers. As I mentioned, Christopher Bell was one of them. He had to go to a backup car, but thankfully he took that backup car and got to a 4th place finish. Austin Cindric, who won a few weeks ago at Gateway, he had a tire problem in practice as well. He had to go to a backup. They didn't really fare well at all. Ross Chastain had some tire problems, but he thankfully didn't wreck the car, even though he got towed on the back of the truck. Pretty funny. Ty Gibbs had a tire problem in practice, but that didn't, force him to a backup car. But then on Saturday's Xfinity race, we had so many tire failures, it gave me practically a headache. I'm like, good Lord, is this how tomorrow night's debut Cup race is going to be at Iowa? Well, surprisingly, we didn't have as many tire failures as I thought we were going to. Now, did we have some tire failures? Yes. The first one was AJ Allmendinger towards the end of stage 1, where he had a right front tire go down and it went into the outside wall in turn 1. When with composite body, the way it looked, I felt like the car wasn't hurt, but something in the front wheel, I think was broken, and that ultimately ended his night. Then we had a couple of other right front tire issues during green flag runs, but yet those tire problems didn't generate a caution because none of those guys put some debris down to the track when those tires were going down, like Michael McDowell, Zane Smith, Ross Chastain, Eric Jones. They had right front tire problems, but they didn't bring out the caution because they didn't put debris down. Now, the caution that did come out during those green flag stops, I think may have been the result of a tire incident. That was Daniel Hemrick, and a lot of people were like, on the radio, why is this a caution yet everybody else's tire problems before that was not a caution? Because they didn't put debris down. I guess Hemrick was going a lot slower at the time. I don't know. But that happened, and then at the beginning, early laps of the final stage, Chris Buescher, who stayed out earlier in the final stage because he elected not to take tires, probably shouldn't have done that because he had a right front tire go down, or maybe he got loose or something going up into turn number 1, which turned out to be the final caution of the race, and ultimately took him out of a chance of a top 10 finish, given how rough they ran last night, and they didn't really benefit them at all. But we did have some tire issues last night. But aside from that, for the first time at Iowa for the Cup Series, the racing product last night was outstanding. We had some great battles side by side. You could pass left and right any time you please. Even on long runs, we had guys going forward versus guys going backwards due to how they were managing their tires, for one thing. But there was also cars that were good on the long runs versus guys on the short runs. Like guys on long runs like Blaney, Larson, Elliott, Bell, they exceeded well. Guys on the short runs like Joey Logano, Kyle Busch, Josh Berry, they were good at the beginning of those runs. Then they faded a little bit into those long runs. But there was some good racing last night at Iowa. And I think, of course, the repaved sections of the turns 1, 2, 3, and 4 added for a little extra grip and allowed for that side-by-side action, particularly in those restarts, which were very entertaining to watch. I thought last night's first Cup race at Iowa was a hit. It was a great, great event. The fan attendance there was outstanding. They've been waiting 20 years since this track was constructed back in 2005, I believe it was, by none other than NASCAR Hall of Famer Rusty Wallace. They have been waiting years after years after years for the Cup Series to come here. And they got it last night, and they got themselves quite a show. I hope we keep Iowa on the schedule going forward, because I think this is a very good racetrack. Some teams last night even said this track kind of raced like an intermediate track, your 1.5 to 2 mile track, because of parts of the track are bumpy and abrasive, and that leads to obviously managing your tires and seeing how good your car is, whether it's on short runs or long runs. But there were some good battles out there last night. It was just a lot of fun to watch, and this is a short track package that we had for this race, and it's by far, other than the Bristol race this year with all that tire fall off we had, this was perhaps one of the best short track races that we've seen this year and with this next-gen car. I thoroughly enjoyed last night, and I hope we keep Iowa on the schedule, because this was the race that's kind of holding down the fort until we get that 3/4 mile configuration of Fontana Speedway together and get that back on the schedule. But I hope if we do get Fontana back on the schedule eventually, I hope Iowa still remains, because I think we've got ourselves a future here, and the Iowa fan base, and particularly Newton, Iowa, a very small area, they have been waiting for NASCAR Cup Series action for years. And we finally got it last night, and I enjoyed the heck out of it. And number 5, the end of an amazing career. On Friday, Martin Truex Jr. announced that this 2024 NASCAR Cup Series season will be his final full-time season behind the wheel of a stock car. I'm not going to lie, I'm a little emotional, and we kind of all expected it. There have been rumblings and rumors the last couple of weeks and about the last month or so. What's Martin Truex Jr. going to do? Is he going to stay another year for Joe Gibbs Racing, or is he going to just stay content with his career and just walk away from the sport after this? Well, he announced on Friday that this will be his final full-time season. He will not run for championships anymore after this year. I mean, it's been an amazing career for Martin Truex Jr. It started out in the Xfinity Series, winning back-to-back championships in 04 and 05 for Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s Xfinity team at the time, which was called Chance 2 Motorsports. Got his first career Cup Series win at Dover, which is his home track because he's from Marietta, New Jersey. Got it on the day that we lost Bill France Jr., which was an emotional day, sadness because of Bill France Jr. dying, but also happiness to see a young, talented driver in Truex at the time get his first career win. And then he went on a stretch where he wasn't really running well and not competing for wins at all, even though in 2012 he came close a few times. He was able to get back to victory lane in 2013 at Sonoma, breaking the 6-year drought, but he didn't make the playoffs because of the Richmond scandal, and a lot of people know about that race. I don't need to go into further detail. And then 2014, he went to Furniture Row Racing, where he wasn't running that well. On and off the track, things were not going his way. Then 2015 came, and they had a complete turnaround where he won at Pocono and made the playoffs and made the championship 4. 2016, they switched to Toyota. He's so strong that year, wins 2 Crown Jewel events. The Coke 600, where he led all but 8 laps, and the Southern 500, where he benefited from Kevin Harvick's pit crew screwing up when it mattered the most. But in 2017 was one of his amazing seasons we've ever seen from him and from any driver that won a championship. He won 8 races, won a lot of stages when we were introduced stage racing that year, as well as winning the regular season championship that got him 15 extra points to carry him through the playoffs. He made the championship 4 and held off Kyle Busch to win that championship. It is still, to this day, one of the most entertaining championship years we've ever seen from a driver. And Martin Truex Jr., it was just so good to see him win the championship that year. But then after 2018 season, Furniture Row Racing closed down, and Truex was left wondering what's next for him. Well, thankfully, Joe Gibbs Racing said, come on over. We'll bring you and we'll bring your partners and Bass Pro Shops along for us. And since he came to Gibbs, Truex has been a contender year in and year out. Was very strong in his first year where he made the Final 4. Second year, after, his former crew chief Cole Pearn decided to focus on family, they brought James Small aboard. They only scored 1 win. But the following year after that, he was able to get back to form, win races, and made the Final 4. But then the first year of the next-gen car, they were good, but they weren't running up front and really competing for wins and sealing it when it mattered the most. He missed the playoffs that year. And then last year, he was able to recover, get back to victory lane, make some races, win some races, and won the regular season championship. But the playoffs did not go well for him. He barely missed the Final 4 because of all the rough races that he had. Now, he still has not yet visited victory lane this year, but points-wise right now, he looks good, and I still got a feeling we're going to see him in victory lane before we get these playoffs started. And I think after this announcement, we'd all love to see Truex get to victory lane one more time. And last night didn't really go well for him. They were not really that good. They didn't qualify well, but they were able to get their laps back through wave around towards the end of the race and got up there and finished in 15th place because they were saving their tires as one of the wave around cars. 100-plus laps to go that long and finish in the top 15. Given how they were all race long, I think they take that. But in general, this is, of course, more about this being the final year for Martin Truex Jr. And I can't thank him for all he's done for the sport. He's going to be a future NASCAR Hall of Famer. There's no doubt about it. He's one of the best drivers that we had. Now, he did not say that he's completely going to retire from racing. He said that he's open to possibly running some races part-time next year, like Jimmy Johnson has right now with Legacy Motor Club. Matter of fact, Denny Hamlin, his teammate, said, hey, if you want to drive for the Daytona 500 next year and get one more shot at trying to win the Great American Race, I've got a seat reserved for you, my friend. It's all yours if you want to take it. And I think he should. I'd like to see Truex get one more opportunity to try to finally win the Daytona 500. He's been close so many times, of course, losing to his then teammate, now teammate Denny Hamlin in 2016. I'd like to see Truex maybe get one more run at that race. But We can't thank Martin enough for what he's done for the sport. Of course, he's still got 19 races left to run. Let's see what he can do throughout the rest of this year, and maybe we'll see him close out his career with another championship. Also, shout out to NBC as they return to NASCAR coverage this weekend at Iowa with Rick Allen, Jeff Burton, Steve Letarte in the booth, Marty Snyder, Dale Jarrett, Brad Doherty, Kim Kuhn, and Dave Burns manning the pits and the Peacock pit box. Of course, Dale Earnhardt Jr. not with us this year as he's focusing on getting ready for next year, becoming a broadcaster for TNT and Amazon Prime. But great to have NBC back last night. The production was great. The coverage they did with the 20 and the 7 team of Christopher Bell and Corey LaJoie last night on pit road and talking to their crew chiefs was a lot of fun. I thoroughly enjoyed that, and I hope that's kind of a preview of what we see going forward throughout the rest of the year with our pit reporters keeping up to date with certain drivers in the pit drivers teams on pit road and talking to the crew chiefs. Exclusive access. It's pretty entertaining. And the production they had last night was very, very good as usual. So thoroughly enjoyed it and glad to have them back as them and USA Network will carry us all the way to Phoenix to crown a champion. Now next week we're off to Loudon, New Hampshire Motor Speedway, the Magic Mile. Such a fun track to race at on the flat 1 mile surface. It's going to be an interesting battle to see who is able to manage their tires and have some strong runs in the long run as they chase that Lobster Trophy. So who will go to victory lane next week? Will it be Martin Truex Jr. who won it last year? Will Ryan Blaney carry off of his win from last night into next week? Or will somebody else that has not yet won this year, and with the clock ticking with 9 races to go, you need to get to victory lane before we get to Daytona and Darlington, or else you're out of options. So we'll see what happens next weekend in Loudon. So I hope you'll have a wonderful week, and I hope all the fathers had a happy Father's Day yesterday. And of course, to my dad, I love you so much, man. I enjoy watching my NASCAR races along with you. I just love you so much. So I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week. Subscribe, like, and congrats once again to Ryan Blaney and the 12th team on their dominant win at Iowa. Have a great week, everybody. Let's go racing!